Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Sam Metcalf. I'm the editor of thebusinessdesk.com in the Midlands. Welcome to our latest webinar in conjunction today with Purpose Media. This morning's session is called Pushing Forward with Digital Transformation. Over the next 45 minutes or so, with the help of an expert panel, we'll learn about what digital transformation actually is, how it can be implemented, as well as how business owners and marketing professionals can access the advice they need to boost sales and reach customers. Now, digital marketing has become ever more important over the last year. Today, our panel will discuss how best to define your strategy so that you can grow your business in a post-pandemic world. You can see our panel there and we'll meet them in a second. But before that, it'd be great if we could get you out in the audience involved today. At the bottom of the screen is a Q&A button. If you have any questions or queries for our panel today, simply press that button, type in what you'd like to know, and I'll do my best to get you an answer from our trio there. Okay, let's meet the panel then. Katie, if you could just say who you are, where you come from, please.
Hi, I'm Katie Sloan. I'm Head of Marketing and Strategic Partners for Tomeco. We keep businesses connected, productive and secure through the intelligent use of technology.
Thanks, Katie. And Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Quinn. I'm Head of People and Skills at D2N2 LET. D2N2, not a failed Star Wars character. It's an economic development body that covers both Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, and my lead is on skills to make sure our economy works well.
Thanks, Rachel. And Ellie.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm Head of Digital Strategy at Purpose Media. We work with clients all over the world to help inspire customers, engage audiences and deliver results.
Okay, thanks you three. Okay, let's crack on with the discussion then. Ellie, we've seen a rise, and you've been busy, I know you have, we've seen a rise of digital marketing over the last, certainly over the last 6 months, I think, since people have got used to this sort of brave new world. But why is digital marketing so popular and so important right now?
I think that it's less that it's popular. I think it's now necessary more than ever. You know, if you're not utilizing digital channels, then really, you know, you're not being able to actually bring your business to life. The businesses that are succeeding are the businesses, when you look online, like ASOS, who they adopted digital years ago. They've built their business models on it, and you know, digital marketing's been accelerated by, I think it's about 6 years. There's a study done on it quite recently. So businesses like Topshop, which are obviously quite relevant now, which are trying to stay on the high street, it's just dying. So it's not so much that digital marketing is popular, it's that those people who embraced it earlier on are actually ahead of the game already.
Okay, Katie, how has Tomeco responded to what's happened over the last year as far as digital marketing is concerned?
We have quite a range of customers across a variety of industries, and we've seen the same thing across all of them, that there are ones who, as Ellie said, are at the forefront, are cloud native already, so we're able to respond to change as a result of the pandemic very quickly. And then others who are a bit more of the technological laggards, if you like, who probably need a little bit more support and have had to really look at how they pivot their business faster. We all know that technology develops at pace and consumer buying trends continue at pace as well. So businesses need all of the intelligent technology they can to help scale and flex as quickly as possible. So Tomeco has been fantastic at supporting businesses doing that. We have a lot of businesses in the hospitality and retail sector, and we've seen both ends of the spectrum, the ones who unfortunately saw a lot more challenges last year as they weren't able to move as quickly, and then others who really thrived, particularly some of our online food delivery companies during the pandemic. So I don't know what any of us would do without pizza during lots of lockdowns, but yeah, that's definitely been an area we've seen some growth. And as Ellie mentions, with ASOS, they're one of our customers as well. So lucky to be able to see some of the transformation that happens with businesses that are just a digital native.
Okay. Rachel, have you found that the businesses you've been working with have recognised that, as Ellie says, digital marketing is necessary?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been a massive uptake. One of the things that D2N2 funds is the D2N2 Growth Hub, which is particularly supporting small and medium-sized enterprises. And we've been tracking what they've been asking for throughout the pandemic. And, you know, after the immediate access to finance, actually to help businesses thrive, the largest then request is for support around digital IT and marketing support, because that's where they've recognised they need to escalate really quickly. And there's also been some very interesting patterns in terms of where those skills are lacking most. So we found, particularly in rural businesses, where they've probably not had the connectivity, which has then led to a slower uptake of the skills that would then uptake that. They're struggling to respond even quicker. So it adds to some of that kind of rural deficit effectively. So, you know, making sure that we can support those businesses to transition really quickly has been quite a priority, and it's difficult. But yeah, absolutely massive uptake from businesses of all sizes, but particularly SMEs.
Yeah, okay. So Ellie, once a company's realised that it needs to do these things, Rachel said, well, what should your rural business in Lincolnshire, for example, or anywhere around the East Midlands do when starting out on a programme of digital marketing? What are the first steps?
Yes, so this is a question that I literally probably get asked every day, because it's my job to work with all sorts of different clients, B2C, B2B, you know, massive turnover, startups, on, you know, how to put together actually a digital marketing strategy that's going to work. And the most important thing that a lot of people don't seem to know is actually what their business objective is. So business objectives are the most important thing that you can bring to the table when you're putting together a marketing or digital marketing strategy. Because if you don't know what you want to achieve as a business, then marketing is just going to be an extra fluffy thing that you're doing for the sake of doing it. And you're not going to get those measurable results. You're not going to get any sort of impact on things like KPIs, or be able to even measure it effectively. So for me, the kind of four main things that you need to focus on are objectives. So what do you want to achieve as a business? Whether that is short term, so in the next kind of 1 to 2 years, or long term, you know, we're talking 5 to 10 years. What do you want in terms of revenue? What do you want in terms of business size? What do you want in terms of, and then you might focus on profit or efficiency or whatever it might be. What do you want from that? That's when you can come on to things like your audience. So again, so many times I ask the question of, you know, who is your audience? You know, who are you looking at targeting? Who are you looking at solving a problem for? And people just don't know the answer. So actually coming to the table with those two things then helps us with the overall channel that we can actually look to market you on. And also looking at your kind of overall message. It's about matching up problems and solutions. So what problem does your business solve? And then let's market that solution to those people who are having that problem. I think a really good example of when things are maybe don't match up with those objectives and with the audience is, I see a lot of like B2B, say like heavily manufacturing based businesses that they come to us and they say, oh, we've been posting loads on Instagram because they've got like an intern in to come in and do some marketing because they don't see the real value in it. They've got somebody in who maybe doesn't have a lot of experience. So they're posting loads on Instagram. But yes, as a channel, maybe that's important, but is it going to impact your sales? Probably not. You know, it's not going to help you with the revenue you want to achieve. It's not going to help you with the efficiency you might want to achieve or the profit. A lot of businesses also look at, you know, neglecting things like their SEO or their digital PR, exactly because of those reasons, because they just don't understand the impact that it can have. So the businesses that are taking advantage of those things, of those objectives, of those channels, of understanding that audience, that's the businesses that are kind of ahead of the game and are making some real gains across search engines and across their marketing.
Does that sound familiar, Rachel?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, totally. And it's, I mean, obviously, Ellie and Katie work in this sphere and they know it much better than I do. But from our point of view, it goes back actually to those core principles of business leadership, which is really understanding, what your business is there to do and how it needs to, what it needs to achieve, and then the marketing can work for you, and you can structure that and make sure you've got the skills to deliver it. It's really important to think about it, and the marketing should be there. I think one of the current challenges that I see is businesses use marketing to promote or to talk about what they've done. They don't embed it as a tool to deliver what they're aiming to achieve, and it's a really, it's a subtle difference, but if you make it part of your core delivery and how you achieve your objectives, it's a very different mindset and approach.
Katie, has it been kind of like starting again for Tamika? Have you had to learn new things since last March?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you always need to understand that marketing strategies are an evolution. They're never something you should just put in place and that's it, you execute on it, it's done. We're always evolving ours. We're learning from our customers. We're learning from the market. We did a great project with Ellie and the Purpose Media team last year to really hone in on both what Rachel and Ellie have said. Your why is so important, why you're in business and why that works for the market that you're in. And one of my favorite business books is Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and I'm sure there are lots of people who follow him on LinkedIn as well. But really getting into that helps to understand how you can attract and engage and delight your customers. And I think it's important that you keep doing that. We absolutely had to shift strategies last year, but not only for our customers and also trying to attract new prospects, but to engage our internal teams as well, and to keep people feeling happy and productive and connected whilst we all move to a work environment. I think we got online as a fully remote working business, over 370 people in under a week and a half. So, it was a rapid transformation, and we're constantly learning about new ways to do things and how to keep improving our marketing and our success, which was a lot of fun, I have to say. In 2020, we learned a lot, and we're one of the fortunate businesses that had a really great growth year, and our marketing became very, very successful.
Good to hear. Rachel, Katie picked up on something there about getting everybody on board, and how important do you think, it's all right for it to come from the top, isn't it, or from the marketing department, but surely for this to work, everybody's got to work towards the same goal and be on the same page.
Absolutely. This needs to be embedded throughout the organisation. There needs to be an understanding of those core messages so that it's structured not only in what you say, but also how you behave as an organisation. It's got to be top to bottom. And that goes back to leadership again. It's that difference between leadership and management. And I think these things go hand in hand. The leadership is how you convey that message. And the management is then how you make it happen and turn it into reality.
How easy then, Ellie, from your experience of working with businesses, is it for both business owners and business leaders, I guess, to get their staff on board? Is it sometimes really tricky? And is there a generational gap, really?
Yeah, I think, when you look at digital marketing, I think a lot of people think it's like a young, hip, new thing, but it's not new. Google's been growing for the past 20 odd years. And I've worked with people who've been there. I wasn't there, but when Google was first created, I was still, I think, a little baby then. But there are a lot of people who I've worked with throughout my career who, they talk about all this stuff like black hat and white hat, like SEO tactics that they used to do, keyword stuffing, and that used to be how simple, in a weird way, marketing used to be. But it's kind of come on so much, and there is so much complexity that comes with it now, that it's not just a case of, oh, well, we want to be better for SEO, or we want to be better for PPC, let's just put some money into it and see what happens. It is, like Rachel said, about that leadership. And I see a lot of failures with clients when their marketing doesn't work is because they don't have an MD who understands marketing. If you don't have, the main person who's kind of leading you and your business, who's bought into marketing and who actually understands it or is interested in it, then nobody else is going to particularly put that at the top of their agenda either. Whereas if you have somebody who, there's a great company in the US, I think, called Fast. And Fast look after things like when you go to purchase something online, they do a really fast checkout procedure. So it's designed to make your checkouts really fast. their managing director or founder is really, really active on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And that means that everybody else is thinking, oh, well, I want to be like that. I want to be the person who's got marketing at the top of our agenda. Is how they've continually raised new funding rounds. They've got new investment. When you look at businesses that have failed, they are usually because the marketing kind of doesn't come from leadership. It comes from people underneath constantly fighting a battle of saying, we need to do this better, we need to do this better. And they keep getting knocked down and they'll leave and go and do other great things elsewhere.
Yeah. Katie, how difficult or not, as the case may be, has this sort of engendering of culture been with remote working? How difficult has it been to keep people, working towards the same message as far as marketing's concerned?
I think it's really about getting as many teams involved in the message as well, and getting that engagement from everybody, because they feel like they're part of the creation of it as well as the distribution. So, I found that going to a remote working, funnily enough, created a much stronger relationship for us between sales and marketing, for example. So we worked really closely together to understand the challenges and insights for customers and prospects, and make sure that any data that we were getting through digital marketing was being fed back into having really meaningful conversations with prospects based on what it is that they needed most and how quickly we could deliver it and support them, which made a much stronger relationship between sales and marketing, stronger than I've ever experienced before, I have to say. And I know all organizations experience challenges between sales and marketing and other departments. But then when we started doing some of our cultural pieces, so we created some fantastic videos on social media about what it was like for Tomiko employees working from home with children, working from home with pets. And then we talked to our teams about, please get out there and share this, because this shows that we have a bit of a personality behind the business. We're not just about enabling digital transformation, but we're here to really understand and help our customers as well. And we saw our engagement skyrocket on social media. So we use LinkedIn quite a lot, and I created a competition between the sales and marketing team across the business around increasing our social selling index, which was all about engaging with the right people who want to understand what it is that we do and how we can help them. And we saw a massive jump to 10.68%. I think we got to in December with our engagement score, which is massive on LinkedIn. If anyone's not aware of that, then I think LinkedIn deems anything over 2% to be great. So we were, very happy with that. And that wasn't just about pushing our solutions. It was very much about showing that personality of the business, which comes from our customer services team and service management teams, understanding and feeding that insight back into the account management and marketing teams, so we can be really relevant to the people that we're trying to meet. And as we said earlier, if we're having to evolve our strategies, getting that insight from all across the business is so important to make sure that your messaging is right. It's not something that's just determined by marketing.
Yeah, sure. That's important, isn't it? I think his personality, if you think, I'm constantly thinking of Greg's, but Greg's was one of the first sort of big brands to do that kind of off the wall kind of thing. And a lot have followed, haven't they now? But Ellie and Rachel, how important is personality in there? We've all seen scheduled tweets, scheduled posts, which sometimes go out at the absolutely wrong time. And others you just scroll past because they're boring. But how important is personality to make this successful?
I think it's so important, if you don't mind me jumping in, Ellie, to be able to utilise all of these techniques to convey that personality, because people aren't, my experience is people aren't necessarily interested in what you're sharing. They're interested in your perspective on what you're sharing. So that view on, certainly using social media, being able to give your perspective or insight on what it means and what the potential next steps for it could be are really helpful. I mean, we are policy bods at the end of the day in an economic partnership, but it's really useful, as policy comes out of government, we can talk about what that means for our local industries and businesses and encourage people to engage in dialogue. So it's not just a means to share information. Back to that point, it's then about starting conversation and engaging people. And if it can work for us as an economic body, it can work for anybody. Can I just pick up on Katie's point as well, because she talked about in particular how sales and marketing have been driven, and we've got some really good examples of that. We did some employer engagement at the start of lockdown, looking at where the sudden rises were for digital, digital and digital marketing skills that fed into our boot camps that I'll hopefully talk about shortly. And one of the big areas was supporting, in particular, B2B salespeople, because their ability to do that face to face, they're often delivered in quite a traditional way, going out, door knocking still, in a lot of our industries, that's been ripped away. And actually, for those businesses to survive, there's been a massive rapid upskilling needed to connect marketing and sales together and support new techniques to reach those business customers, and we've had huge demand for that kind of product.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to let you talk about your boot camps in a minute, Rachel, but we've got a question. We've got a question from Roma. It's a quite technical one, I guess. Roma says the board are always concerned about ROI from marketing activities other than stats like click rates and engagement rate. What's the best way to manage those conversations? Ellie?
Yeah, I thought that might be one for me to take. Katie, you might, because you obviously talk a lot to your board as well. You might have something to add, but I think the first thing, I guess, to answer that is, what are you benchmarking your ROI against? Like, what is your return on investment? Like, yes, okay, we all know that we want to get more back from like the spend that we're putting into marketing, but is a stat like a click rate that important, or could we be focusing on something else? Managing those conversations, I think, needs to come from very, very clear objective settings. So actually, when I put together a digital strategy, for instance, I would say, right, in a year's time, this is where we want to be. And then if you split that up into quarters, this is where we want to be in Q1. And Katie, I know you do something similar with this because we've talked about it a lot. And you try and chunk it down into quarters to talk about this is what we want to achieve and this is what our focus is going to be. Now, it's important that for the board or like directors or whoever you are going to talk to in that respect, they may not necessarily understand what all of those things mean and all those complicated things mean. But if you can show them the impact that it's going to have and actually prove, what is the return in terms of the amount of customers, or, can you look at building things like audience lists to show that you are watching numbers go up and you can remarket to those people, or, are people spending longer on your page, then test things. And, why are you not making sure that your own objectives are clear? I think with a board to talk about and be concerned about ROI, they have to be the ones that are setting the clear standards. We have the same kind of onus on our own marketing for purpose media. My MD comes to me and says, this is what we want to achieve. This is the return that we expect to see from it. So just having those conversations and upskilling them, I think, is probably the best way to do that. Katie, you obviously have a lot of, you have to do exactly that probably on like a daily or weekly basis. Have you got anything to kind of add to that to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have to do monthly board reports and justify our spend and set our budgets for the year. And obviously that changed during 2020 as well. So we had to really refine and look at how we're investing. And as you say, Ellie, it's about defining what are your goals. So are you looking to increase brand awareness? Are you looking to develop your market positioning? Are you looking to drive lead generation, demand generation? And therefore there are some quick wins in some of those areas and then others that take a little bit longer. And it's about making sure that the board or your stakeholders understand that there's going to be different timelines and different responses to each parts of it. But it's also about educating them on the benefits and the different tools and methods of digital marketing and how that can affect transformation. And I think the biggest thing, as we've spoken about briefly, Rachel, was the integration of sales and marketing and other allies across the business, I think too, is getting people to understand and again have that input. So when we invest in digital marketing, I'm always talking to sales about, I see marketing as a pre-sales function. So you need us to be able to go out to market, but we also need you to keep winning business so that we can get more investment to continue growing. But I think it's really important that businesses don't separate sales and marketing spend or ROI. So, I don't have separate targets that I set. These are just for marketing. It is, these are the new sales targets. We're trying to achieve 3 times growth this year. So here's here's all the things we're doing to enable growth, and we're utilizing tools that enable us to fail fast as well, so we can test new solutions and campaigns, and if it doesn't work or it's not having the response that we want, we can change direction or we can adjust the strategy as needed. But it's again about getting that feedback from the people who are utilizing it. So in 2020, we utilized regular meetings every week with the sales team, and I said, here's what we're producing for you, here's how it's intended to be used, is it what you want, is it what you need, what is critical, what can we develop, what is, and I asked for really honest feedback, like tell us what doesn't work and what you don't like, and we'll change it. And I think that's not something that I've seen from a lot of other businesses. They tend to say, no, this is what marketing has deemed to be the correct way to go. But I think you need to welcome that feedback from your sales and customer success teams.
Okay, I hope that's answered your question, Roma. Rachel, let's talk about your digital boot camps. What help is there? What are you doing to help fund small businesses in the drive towards digital transformation?
Yeah. Okay. So there are a couple of strands of activity that I think are worth highlighting, and the first is, and we've already touched on this. This is also about the core of your business. So I'd encourage any businesses on the call that haven't already done so to make sure they're registered with the D2N2 Growth Hub, because that's where they'll get that information about new products that are arriving, grants, funding, all sorts of bits and bobs, and also be able to explore that business support element and think about skills needs if they need them. So that's that kind of core business analysis. We've got a couple of other programs as well, and I'll put all of these in the chat later so that people can have a look at the links if they want to have a look at them. So there's a very short intervention upskilling model through our skills support for the workforce project, which is if you've got a very niche need within your workforce for some targeted upskilling, absolutely free to access. You can get support from that. The next level on, particularly around digital, is supporting your employees to really engage with digital. So if you've got employees who aren't digitally confident, there is the Digital Eye program that's operating across our area as well, which will bring people up to a competent user level to make sure that that's okay. But the big one for us is these boot camps. So these are pilots operating in D2N2 with a really strong focus on digital marketing and related activities. So we did a lot of engagement early on with employers, as I already touched on. Digital marketing came up as really high, but they're roughly 12-week boot camps, intensive. They're for people who are currently employed, or they can be unemployed with a view to working with an employer as a pipeline into the role to fill vacancies. If they are for employed staff, there is a small contribution, and employers are expected to be involved to make sure that the training works for you and for your business. But there are complementary pathways. So as well as that core digital marketing, what we also know is digital leadership is needed, a big ask around that, understanding how digital works for a business and how marketing can work for a business and embed it. So there's a pathway, a kind of higher pathway around that. And also we've got a big focus on both analytics. So it's okay, as much as you create this, you also need to be able to use the information that you're gathering as a result of marketing and communications activity and further it and build it back into your business model. So there's a big focus on data and analytics, and also on cybersecurity, which is something that everyone needs to be increasingly aware of. So across those pathways, there should be pretty much something that supports every business actually. And again, I will put in the chat. Longer term, I think it's really worth, and it's, skills is the thing that businesses forget to focus on, and it's the bit that I bash on about all the time is think longer term. There are digital pathways coming through T-levels to bring new people in. There are colleges who are piloting those. There are apprenticeships that can be run with these if you're looking at longer term pathways. So just think long term as well. But in the short term, 12 weeks, you could have someone really hitting those buttons in terms of those skills gaps.
Can I add that that's really important? Sorry, Sam. Really important, Rachel, that you have that focus on data analytics and people understanding how to use it, because I'm sure Ellie would know from all of her engagements as well, there's so many different tools out there, but the tools are only as good as the people who know how to use them. So, we implemented HubSpot at Miko, and it has been a fantastic tool in terms of being able to segment data and use it intelligently, and be able to shift those campaigns quickly when we need to. And again, it's very much about being able to provide that ROI and ongoing change back to the board and stakeholders who need to see where that investment is going. But that was a big thing for us last year, was as we doubled the size of our team, we had to look at making sure we had the right people with the right skills to come in and enable growth. And we do all of our own content generation and PR and in-house design. But within our team, I think a really key element is that we don't have silos of people who just have a single skill set. It's very much about cross-skilling across and being multifunctional to be really successful. So having people who understand how to use analytics in the right way, and that is a really core part of integrating your business and getting that success long-term, as you say. So yeah, I just wanted to add there. I think it's great to see that there's some support out there for businesses looking to do that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Rachel. Ellie, you've got a question from David. He says, on average, how long does a marketing strategy take to identify and possibly implement? I know Rachel mentioned a timescale there. And I'll just add to that, if you could think about maybe one you've worked on, or a national campaign, or a famous one, what does a successful marketing campaign look like to you, Ellie?
Well, I mean, I could give the complicated answer, which would go along the lines of how long is a piece of string. But most of the time, I mean, again, it depends on your objective. So as long as you come to me or somebody like me, for instance, with your objectives and like your audience in mind, usually you can put something together depending on how in depth you want to go within kind of 1 to 3 months. And I've worked with some big global companies that want to go really in depth. They want to really look at things like market research, and they want to ask their customers and clients what they think of them, what they look at in terms of market share and things like that. But then there are some people who actually, they're starting out in marketing and in digital, and they have no idea, and that is such an overload of information. So they need something that's simple and straightforward, that requires maybe not a huge amount of investment to get them going. So I think it depends on the type of business you are, to be honest with you, and it definitely depends on what type of industry you're in as well, because depending on what industry you're in, for instance, if you're in professional services or manufacturing, for instance, probably manufacturing more importantly for this, they are behind the curve a little bit in kind of digital adoption. Whereas if you look at kind of retail, online and e-commerce businesses, a lot of those people are kind of ahead of the curve with digital, so they might require something that is a bit more in depth. And there's also going to be more information available on market segmentation, on audiences, and on all of those things that we really need to understand in depth. So it's kind of a difficult question to answer. The one thing I will say is that there is a big difference between a plan and a strategy. A plan is just tactics that you put together and say, right, we're going to do this, and that's that. And you don't really measure it effectively. You don't really, do much research into it. You might just try things out. Whereas a strategy is, how are you solving customers' problems, and how do you communicate that message to them? And it sounds quite simple. And it might be depending on the business you're in. But for some businesses, like Katie and I talk quite often about Timico, it's quite a complex business structure, and there's lots of different audiences, for instance, that we're trying to target, lots of different products, lots of different solutions for problems. That's going to be something that's much bigger to solve than a manufacturing business that sells signs, for instance. So yeah, I hope that sort of answers your question, David, but you can shoot me a message on LinkedIn if you want to have a bit of a further chat about it.
Can I add there too that whilst, as Ellie says, you need to have a really core strategy that's well thought out about how you're going to achieve your target market goals, but at the same time, you want to have some flexibility in there to be a bit creative, and that was something we really embraced in 2020. So an example of a successful campaign we had was one of our customers is St John Ambulance, and obviously, you know, they rely on our connectivity to save lives, to be able to connect volunteers during critical periods. So they're a very core customer for us, but we were looking at how we could drive some more brand awareness around how we can support not-for-profit and public sector businesses. So whilst we have our target strategies, last year we were thinking, okay, we need to think differently about how we can support these businesses during 2020, because a lot of charities were affected by COVID and the fact that there were no longer big events to help with fundraising. So for SJA, they're also our chosen charity that we donate to. And so we started coming up with some other ideas around the 2.6 challenge came up, which I'm sure you guys would have heard of as a result of the London Marathon being cancelled. We created an online video of everyone doing amazing workouts and contributions to that. And then throughout the year, we did some other activities like the Great Tamiko Cake Off. And for Halloween, we said, let's go green for Halloween for SJA. And I painted myself completely green as Elphabas. That was some interesting meetings that day, dressed as a witch on video calls. But it got a lot of attention, and SJA was so grateful, because by the end of the year, we were running some raffles and bingo games online. We raised over £5,000 for St John Ambulance, which was mutually beneficial for them, but also great for brand awareness and showing some of our culture as well. So I think and that was all kind of created at the last minute. Like my team and I often will get on our team huddles in the morning and say, what can we do to support? Oh, Halloween's coming up. Let's do something fun. Let's support SJA. So yeah, I think you need to allow some creativity and room for evolution as you move along with a core strategy. So you're still meeting those goals.
I think to add to that, it's about, having that balance between both, a proactive and a reactive strategy. My team internally are probably bored of me banging on about the balance of proactivity and reactivity, but it is so important. And a lot of the time, I've worked with clients in the past who've rung up and been like, oh, like we've seen our competitors doing this, like we need to do it now. And it's like, okay, well, let's just stop. Why do you need to do it? What's the benefit of it? Are you just doing it because like your competitor's done it? Or are you doing it because you think it's actually going to help your customers? And they're like, oh no, you're right, like we're just doing it to copy our competitors or something like that. So that in itself, and being proactive and coming up with your own ideas and that creativity that Katie was talking about, it's invaluable to so many businesses. And a lot of the time, the reason that doesn't get done is purely because of resource or purely because everyone's busy. But that's not really like a good enough excuse, because those things can have such value to who you are as a brand and ultimately what you're trying to do with your overall marketing funnel.
Thanks, Ellie. I'm going to ask this next question from the audience to Rachel, because there might be a very sharp intake of breath if I ask it to Katie or Ellie. But is marketing and sales the same thing, Rachel?
No, no, it isn't. These two women will know much better than me, but no, they're not the same thing. The sales is specifically about how you take your customer and facilitate that buying process. But the whole sort of gamut about what you're there to achieve and your objectives, and getting your audience to buy into you as a business and your products in advance of that is a much broader church of activity, and it's the two have got to work together. Absolutely, but I'm sure they can better respond to that than I can.
Hey, yeah, I'll leave that to you.
I sometimes think of sales and marketing a bit like siblings. So there are times when they get along really well and everything's really fantastic and you get great results and loving relationship, and then other times where they have completely different ideas and different ways of doing things, and that's where you can obviously then have conflict or challenges. So I would say no, they're definitely not one and the same, but at the same time they couldn't exist one without the other. They need to have each other, and they need to be really well integrated and working together. So you want everyone singing from the same hymn sheet and conveying the same message. And I think that's really important, to always be getting that feedback from sales to make sure that your message is right, because you could create the best marketing strategies and the best messaging, but if the sales team don't believe in it and they're not going to go out and use it, then it's completely a waste of time really and resource.
And I think to just follow up from that where I see the lack of results for businesses is where you sit in a room with a kind of marketing director or financial director who refer to the marketing team as the girls, and the like your marketing is fluffy stuff, and then they sit there and get annoyed because they're not selling products and services. And it's kind of like, well, that's the kind of disparity. That's where you're not making those two things marry up, because actually if you invested in your marketing, you invested in a marketing strategy, then you wouldn't be coming to say to me that you're not selling your products and services, because they would be selling themselves, because they would be influencing the people who you ultimately want to buy those things. So yeah, if you are one of those people, have a think about how your marketing could really, really have an impact on your sales.
And also, just coming back on that perpetual feedback loop is so important, because ultimately your sales team are making sure that those products are meeting those actual customer demands, on quite a one-to-one relationship, and the ongoing dialogue and feedback from that sales team back into marketing has to happen if the two siblings are going to work together effectively.
Okay. A couple of quick questions from the audience, and without giving all your trade secrets away, probably Ellie and Katie. Harriet says, when's the best times to post content online at the moment? Harriet struggled to find the best time during lockdown. And Craig says, what's the best practice regarding business social media accounts? Should a marketing department access and post to accounts, or an individual? Do you want to have a go at that one, Ellie, or those two?
Yeah. So I think times to post on social media is a really tricky one. There's some posts that you'll read that will be like, we've got this down and we know all of the best times to post. Sprout Social, if you want to have a look at, they've got a really good study that they've done where they've actually taken data from across the world, put it in with times and platforms to kind of show when that best engagement time is. But we all know that this past year has been a bit crazy and has really changed it's definitely changed how I've used any platforms online, including like my social media, including even things like, flexible working and things like that. Everybody has much different schedules now. So I would ultimately say that there is never really a best time to post on social media that works across the board. I think it has to be particular to you, and the only way you're going to find that out is by a very long amount of testing, unfortunately. And yeah, it sounds like an absolute pain, but it's really, really worthwhile when you know that posting something for your professional network on Friday afternoon is not going to work, because all everybody is dreaming about is a beer when they finish work, and they don't want to be on LinkedIn. Whereas on Monday, people might be maybe putting off work, so they want to go on LinkedIn and actually start engaging with people and talking to people because they're ready for the week or something like that. There's not really a simple answer to that question, but the Sprout Social, it's called the best times to post Sprout Social. If you Google that, it should come up. They've done one for 2020, and yeah, it's probably a little bit different to previous years, but it might give you some guides to start testing. And also just make sure that if you do post anything, like keep a spreadsheet of what you're looking at in terms of like results. I feel like that's a really, really good way to, again, measure things effectively and report back on results as well.
Oh, I'd counter that by saying I hate spreadsheets, and so things like make it so much easier to do that. We used to have spreadsheets that we'd schedule all of our content, or my team would write content and I'd go in and review it and have to make edits, and I just hated Excel. But HubSpot has made that so easy for us that we schedule content straight into there, or we draft content in there. I can go in and look at it, make any changes I want to. It's linked to our LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook platforms, and can link to lots of others. They also have great insight on their blogs and their academy around the best times to post. And what you can do is you can have suggested times, but then it says post like a human. So you might say, okay, Tuesday around 11 o'clock is a good time, but it will post not right on 11 o'clock. It will adjust to a few minutes within that. So it looks a little bit more natural across your platforms. And I think that's important too, that it doesn't just look like you're churning out automated content. And as Ellie said, whilst there's a lot of change happening, you also need to be able to be reactive. And so I have, a couple of my team are clued into what would be relevant to our market, and they'll share a relevant article or share a news because we've all connected to the platform, which makes it a lot easier for people to meet people, I guess, online not meet people online, but to target your market at different times. Sound like I'm saying online dating or something there, but because we used to look at traditional things like when people might be on the train in the morning or the afternoon, that's not happening so much now. As Ellie says, it can be very scattered times that they're on, that you want to have a real mix. But yeah, I would absolutely say things like HubSpot make it a lot easier. And then they have all the reports. So I just got one yesterday that came through as an automated report of here's your social results from the platforms over 2020, and you can target that. So it's a great thing for me to be able to show to the board, here are the key posts. This is why we post this stuff, because it has the most success at driving engagement. It gives you a lot more insight to work with, which is really useful.
I agree with all of that. So ignore spreadsheets.
Yeah.
But with automation wins, especially when it comes to digital.
Time is nearly beating us, but we've got my final question, and luckily a question from David, which kind of intertwines with that. So my question was, what one piece of advice would you give to a business owner contemplating digital marketing? David wants to know a sort of top tip for engaging the workforce in digital marketing when they might believe that like the girls, as I think Ellie said, it's the job for them. But
don't say that.
Rachel, do you want to tackle that one first?
Yeah, I'd love to come in on this one, and it's really reflecting how our own journey around marketing, because before we were an organisation who just talked about which ribbons have been cut because we've invested some capital funding, and people aren't interested. And what's been the real shift is each of our departments or department leads are meeting with our marketing teams who are good. So there is a good understanding of what are the big messages that we need to convey. For me, so it's about we need to engage our employers closely with schools, so we're shaping our future talent pipeline. That's quite an integrated message that needs a longer term strategy and planning behind it to make sure it's achievable. So it's really make sure that everybody understands and your marketing team is aware of the objectives and the targets that each part of your business has, and in that, if that happens, they can be part of achieving them and part of the solution, and by definition that will help build those relationships. And that's the biggest thing and the biggest change that we've had in our organisation.
Thanks, Rachel. Katie?
Yeah, I would say in terms of engaging other teams across the business, communication is really important. So we have internal communication or from sales and marketing every 4 to 6 weeks around what we're doing, what we have done, any key messages and key wins as well. So we can give the whole business the same stories to talk about. We're constantly encouraging people to engage on social media, because whilst we can develop our own following on our channels, if it's shared by all of our internal employees, they become brand ambassadors, and it can expand our message and our reach a lot further. And the advice I'd probably give to people starting out or looking to develop their digital marketing strategies would be to seek advice from the experts like Ellie and the team around developing a really core strategy, and make sure you use tools and technology that are scalable and enable automation wherever possible. I think automate wherever you can, but also things, as I've mentioned a few times, our love of HubSpot, but the opportunity to personalize wherever you can using the insight that you receive from those tools is going to make the biggest difference overall. So yeah, automate and personalize as much as possible.
Thanks, Katie. And finally, Ellie.
Yeah, I think before this webinar started, we all kind of had a chat around what actually digital transformation is, and I think a lot of people have the misconception that it is just based on installing some new software, or buying new laptops for everybody, or getting a new system online or whatever. But it's actually not. It's a culture change, and I can't remember whose question it just was that popped up. David's question around like engaging the wider workforce of the business. Just ask their opinion. So often marketing is looked at as this, it's a separate office, everybody closes their doors, and like they get on and they do things that look nice, and nobody really understands maybe the impact that's happening with it. But go and ask people like what they think of the marketing, like explain to them why you're doing this on social media, explain to them how you're driving sales, explain to them how you're working with the rest of the business, because you might have parts of the business that are involved more with client services, I guess in agency land it's called, but it might be like customer services or something like that. Had a bit of a brain block there. But if you ask your customer services reps and say, what do our customers want? They can go and ask. They can go and talk to them for you. They can do that job for them. And I think it literally is as simple as that. It's making sure that for that culture change, if you really want to adopt digital marketing, to get everybody on board, you just need to ask them and, get their opinion, get them involved in some sort of workshop to talk about things like your values, get them involved in talking about your objectives and what you want to achieve and how you want to be seen as a business and how you are going to change and evolve. Those things are so underestimated when it comes to businesses that, like Katie said, not everything has to be really siloed. Everybody is responsible for every single output of the business. And I think that's something that, especially with kind of digital going forward, is just going to be something that keeps on growing.
Okay, Ellie, thanks for that. I'm sure everybody in the audience has learned a lot today. I know I have. So thank you to everybody in the audience. Thank you for asking the questions. Thank you to Katie, Rachel and Ellie, and thank you to Purpose Media for sponsoring today. And we'll see you all again in our next webinar. Thank you very much.